Meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted in accordance with the regulations and provisions of amended Substitute House Bill 197. This is a meeting of the West Geauga Local School District Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the West Geauga Local School District business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Please use the chat room function at the bottom of the page if you'd like to be recognized for participation. Would you call the roll, please, Karen?
Yes, before that, are we recording, Mr. Kish?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Dr. Beers?
Here.
Mr. Ramey?
Here.
Mr. Katowski?
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth?
Yes.
Mr. Thorson?
Yes.
Would you join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
No.
Yes,
Wait, I thought it was already changed in board docs.
already been changed. It was item number 7.04 to add a Wilson reading tutor.
That has been changed in board docs already, though.
It has
Correct.
been changed in board docs. So
Okay.
When? Well,
About,
whatever. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Go on.
Okay. Are there any people that have signed up for public remarks, Mr. Kish? You're on mute.
There is no one in the chat room right now, so no.
Okay, thank you. Move on to routine items.
yes, resolution 166 to approve routine matters of West Geauga Local Board of Education to conclude the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Would you call the roll, please?
Dr. Beers?
Yes.
Mr. Katowski?
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth?
Yes.
Mr. Ramey?
Yes.
Mr. Thorson?
Yes, sorry, yes.
Resolution
Okay. Go ahead.
Resolution 167 to approve then and now certificate.
So moved.
Any questions? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Katowski?
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth?
Yes.
Mr. Ramey?
Yes.
Mr. Thorson?
Yes,
Dr. Beers?
Yes.
Dr. Marquardt?
Resolution 168 is to accept the non-renewal of all 2019-2020 certified long-term substitute contracts.
So move.
Second.
Any questions? Call the roll, please.
Ms. Leavenworth?
Yes.
Mr. Ramey?
Yes.
Mr. Thorson?
Dan, you're on mute. Dan, can you hear us okay?
yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Beers?
Yes.
And Mr. Katowski?
Yes.
Resolution 169 is to accept the non-renewal of all 2019-2020 classified long-term substitute contracts.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? To call the roll, please.
Mr. Ramey?
Yes.
Mr. Thorson?
Yes,
Dr. Beers?
Yes.
Mr. Katowski?
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth?
Yes.
Resolution 170 is to approve substitute drivers for summer routes for extended school year services.
So move.
There's a
Second.
second.
Yeah, second.
Any questions? To call the roll, please.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Resolution 171 is to approve the certification of the 2020 West Geauga High School graduates. It's this
So moved.
resolution that makes it,
Second.
okay, it makes it
Well,
official.
Markwood, you need to back up to 7.04.
That's the one that Amy just asked to be added in.
Can you read that one, Karen? Because I don't, it was on my phone.
Well,
Yeah.
let's do this one. We've already had a motion and then we can go to the other one.
Finish
fine.
this one.
I'm sorry, who was the first motion?
I did.
Second?
I did.
Thank you so much. Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Resolution 171 to approve extended school year service contract for the 2019-2020 school year.
This is 7.04.
7.04.
Okay.
I'll move.
Second.
Can you explain what this is?
Yes, Jody Lyle will be doing some Wilson trained home instruction for a student we have that needs that during the summer months.
Okay. Any questions? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Resolution 172 is to approve the 2020 Summer Opportunities Program.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Is this, Karen, is this really resolution 173 now, or how do we change the numbers?
173.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
For clarification, what was the one that we added? Was it a name to an existing resolution or was it a different resolution?
It was an additional resolution.
What was the number of it?
7.04.
And it became,
It was
res-
170. Well, it was
What's the resolution number? Is what I need to
had to
know.
be. It had to be like. Well, go
One
ahead.
set.
It had to be
171.
like 170, 180, something like that.
71.
Oh, then we just renumbered everything else.
Yes, we did.
Okay. See, none of that is on board
It has
docs.
become 174 now.
It's on Board Docs now. I mean, it's on my printed version of Board Docs, so.
Okay. Well, it's not on the online version, which is what I'm looking at right now, which is why I'm confused. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, is
Just roll with it.
the elementary school handbook now resolution 174? I guess is my question.
Yes,
Or 173?
174.
Resolution 174 is to approve the 2020-2021 West Geauga Elementary School Student Handbook.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Love,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Katsowski.
Yes.
Resolution 175 is to approve the 2020-2021 West Geauga Middle School Parent-Student Handbook.
So move.
Second.
Any questions? Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
Resolution 176 is to approve the 2020-2021 West Geauga High School Parent-Student Handbook.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? To call the roll, please?
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Resolution 177 is to approve the purchase of buses in the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions about the buses? These are like a normal replacement type of progress that we go through, right?
We typically replace 2 buses a year.
Yeah.
So, Rich, I do have a question. Is this at all in response to Newberry? Has our cycle changed in response to Newberry, or what are we doing to cope with that?
Not really at this point in time. As you know, Newberry's buses are coming over. These are 2 new buses for next school year. We customarily try to keep the fleet somewhat updated. Sean, is there anything specific about this that you'd like to note?
No, this exactly what you said. It's the exact same cycle we've been on. We've been replacing 2 buses a year. So we're following the exact same cycle. With the combined fleet, what'll probably happen in this case is it will decide what buses we sell this time. We'll sell the oldest buses from the combined fleet when we combine the fleet over the summer. And we're going to do the same thing we've done in the past. We're not doing a trade-in. We are going to put them out to auction because financially we've always done better going that route.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? To call the roll, please.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Resolution 178 is to approve the purchase of transportation vans in the 2020-21 school year.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Any comments about the van purchase, Sean or Rich? Okay, no, that's fine.
Nothing specific, no.
Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Resolution 179 is to approve the purchase of Chromebooks and carts in the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments about these? Okay, call the
This
roll,
is-
please. Well, John?
It's basically, we're just doing the same Chromebook purchases we've been doing every year. We'll be buying for the 9th graders, again, for that 1-to-1 program that you've been supporting year over year. And we'll also be buying a year for the middle school, and we'll be replacing 3rd grade at the elementaries. This year, the only difference from the last 2 years is the fact that we did have to add on additional ones at 4th and 5th grade at the elementary because of the additional students there.
Okay,
That's a one-time thing, though.
any other questions? To call the roll, please?
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're ready for the superintendent's report, Rich.
All right, I'll keep it brief. Obviously, at the end of any school year, there are a lot of events to report. One of the culminating activities you as a board completed tonight by certifying the class of 2020. So now those kids are official. They can all breathe a mighty sigh of relief. Each of our buildings had special ways to commemorate the end of the school year and to honor the students who were the, I hesitate to use the word graduates, but the students who were leaving their buildings to go to others. Obviously, the biggest task per year falls to the high school. And this year was very, very unusual because the traditional ways of honoring the class of 2020 had to be foregone because of the COVID-19 situation. So I would like to commend and thank all of those who gave our 2020 graduates a memorable send-off. From the board, I know that Kathy Leavenworth was very faithful for 2 days to stand out there and bake in the sun, shaking hands with students, and it was much appreciated and much noticed. But in reality, it was a team effort that called together a lot of people, both from our certified staff and our classified staff. Chelsea Talty must have quite a sunburn now because she was out there giving it her all for many days. And many of our classified staff also were helpful in getting things set up and making sure that they ran. I think a lot of administrators played a role in that, but the chief role was played by Jay Bishop. Jay was the orchestrator of that and basically the architect of what we did to honor his kids as they left West Geauga High School. And so a special thank you to Jay for all the effort that he put into it and making the kids' memories very, very happy. When I've gotten a lot of emails from parents, and I know that Jay has probably gotten many more than I, thanking the school for the proper way that it commemorated the graduation of our students. And in those emails, there was specific mention made of Jay. The parents recognized all the work that he did, and I really appreciated it. We coined sort of a new phrase. We talked about a virtual graduation, and one of the people who was there said, you know, you really shouldn't call this a virtual graduation. You should call it a personal graduation because every kid and their family gets special time to be honored. One of the things we did, I think that was a very nice touch, was that Jim Kish was also there, so that in addition to the professional photographs that were taken, there was an opportunity for each family to get up on stage and have photographs taken with their student as he or she graduated. So all in all, it was a very nice time. A hot day, but the weather was perfect. We couldn't have asked for better weather than we had those 2 days. Right now, a lot of our energy is focusing on the resumption of our sports program. In particular, our fall sports program is ready to initiate its conditioning practices. The situation right now is that I and the union are working together to get ready to present to the board a memorandum of understanding that will address the compensation for our fall sports coaches. The reason this is being done this year is because we don't completely know the status of fall sports. We hope that we'll have a full fall sports season. We can't be assured of that right now with some of the social distancing protocols that are in place. We're presuming that we will. We're moving ahead with that, but we have to get the approval of the coaches, and that is dependent upon the finalization of the MOU. So the board can expect to see both the MOU with the Teachers Union and also the roster of fall coaches at the June 24th board meeting. Once that is approved and the liability issues are satisfied, we'll begin conditioning practice shortly thereafter. So hopefully the last week of June, we'll start seeing our kids on the fields conditioning. We had to submit a plan to the health department to get our practices approved. Ben Staher, our athletic director, put together a plan which was sent to the health department last week and got its stamp of approval. This is for the phase 1 conditioning. As sports are rolled out for the schools in Ohio, there are 3 phases to the resumption of athletic activities. Each of them contain restrictions on the number of students who are on the field, how equipment is handled, what students are wearing, et cetera, in terms of face masks or no face masks, and what the protocol is for the coaches as well. So it's not a simple matter. It's not as simple as just saying we'll resume practices tomorrow. There's some things that have to be in place for us to do that, and we're going to do it the right way. So hopefully by the last week in June, we'll see our kids in conditioning. They'll be in small groups. The groups that assemble on the fields can be no more than 10 in total, and that includes the coach. So you can see there are some very, very specific guidelines in place that we're meeting. The last activity we have for the class of 2020 is going to be a celebration of that class where we'll view the composite video, which is the compilation of all of the personal graduations I just talked to you about. And those will be shown at the drive-in on Mayfield Road in Chardon on June 14th. So you're invited to go to that. Some of you I know will be there and some of you may not be, but that is the night that we'll have the culmination and the showing of that video. And after that, we have to let them go. They're on their own then, although they'll never truly be without us. They'll always be our kids. That's my report.
Rich,
Yes, sir.
a number of parents have reached out, and I'm sorry, I was kind of keeping you guys from watching me. Sorry about that. A number of parents have reached out by the fact that we are behind a lot of our other school districts in getting our athletes on the field. For instance, Chardon, Kenston, and I'm not sure about Chagrin, but Mayfield, their players are already on the field, and we're talking about well after the 24th of June.
We're not talking well after the 24th, Dan. We're talking getting it all approved on the 24th. I can't speak to those districts. I don't know whether they've had board approval for all of the for the resumption of practices. I imagine some have, but I think that we're pretty much on a par with most of them. I just don't feel comfortable recommending that we. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, because I have my pictures on. I just don't feel comfortable recommending it for liability purposes until we have our fall coaches in place. And for us to have the fall coaches in place, they have to first be hired. And for them to be hired when we're not completely certain on the fate of the fall sports program, we have to have an MOU in place that describes what the compensation will be and what the compensation would be if the season were for some reason cut short. I know the union's working with me on that. I'm not faulting the union at all because I sent that to them last week, and they're working on it now. It'll have to be presented before the executive committee of the WGEA, and then it will have to be brought back to the board. We also have to get the coaches selected while we're in the process of many of our coaches. We know who they are. There are some, particularly at the middle school level, who haven't been hired yet. So we have to have the internal posting period expire. We're moving on this as expeditiously as we can at this point in time. I just have to make sure that for the sake of the safety of the kids and for the liability of the coaches in the school district, that the coaches are actually hired by us. Traditionally, as you know, the coaches, the conditioning practice would have started presumably on the end of the coach's previous year contract, and those contracts have now expired because we're moving into June now. So it's really it's incumbent upon the coaches who are being hired for the fall to conduct the practices and to be responsible for those practices. We're moving as quickly as we can, and any parent who's reached out, I've gotten 3 emails from parents and I've answered them and told them that. But I can't speak to how other schools are doing it because I don't know if they have their fall coaches approved or if they've actually, if they're using the same coaches they used the previous year. I do know that there are some schools that parents assume have practices in place and they don't at this point in time. Some of the information that's out there is not accurate. I'm not going to speak to specific schools, but.
Rich, one thing is like a number of practices can't start until a set date as well, right?
Right, and the regular practice season is not going to start really until August. This is the conditioning practice, which is usually tacked on to the end of the preceding school year. It's like the spring one, and usually that's limited. I think it's limited to a certain number of days, and now, of course, there have been some allowances made for that as well. So
how do you see the MOU working? Is it going to be just very straightforward that compensation is based off of days worked, or is there?
It's not completely based on a prorated system. It actually starts with the first day of practice, which would be later in the school year. The conditioning practices now really are not covered by it. Those are generally considered volunteer work by the coaches. But it starts with the first day of practice. There's a certain percentage of the stipend that is paid then. Then there's another percentage that's paid once the actual season starts, when the kids are in school for that first day. And then there's another percentage that's paid partway through the season, if the season gets to a certain point. So that eventually it's 100% compensation. But it's at this stage of the game, the draft with the OEA has it broken down into increments of 30% for the head coaches and 25%, I believe it is, for the assistant coaches, up to 100% if the season is completed. And of course, I have not yet seen any proposed revisions that the union would make, but at this point in time, I think that they and I are on the same page. I don't see any areas of discrepancy there or difference. But we are moving, as quickly as we can to do this. Some schools I know started. The governor offered practice start on March 26th, and really nobody had anything in place on March 26th. And it takes a while to get the plane off the ground when it comes to hiring the coaches, et cetera. We didn't really know what the fate of fall athletics was going to be at that time. And there will have to be some modifications, obviously, to the current restrictions if fall sports are going to happen. I think they will. I think that those modifications will come. But initially, remember, we had guidelines in place that held us at bay, so to speak, until July 1st. And then all of a sudden, May 26th, we were given a green light. So we're moving as quickly as we can on this, but we're trying to safeguard the interest of the board, because if a student gets injured in conditioning, or if a student gets hurt on the practice field and we don't have board-approved coaches in place, it would be problematic for everybody involved.
Okay, thanks, Rich.
All
Any
right.
other questions for Rich? Okay, we'll move on to board reports. There are a number of things that I want to bring you up to speed on concerning the Newberry property disposition. First of all, thank you to all of you that were able to be there at the June 3rd meeting and hear that presentation. I was able to listen to it since then. Fortunately, it was recorded so I could hear what all was said. And the number one thing that came out of it, I guess, is when are you guys going to decide the timeline? And as several of you commented, that was something that I wanted to talk about tonight, is what kind of timeline we need to give to the Newberry trustees to come up with some proposals, or that we are willing to work with whomever as far as transitioning the property. At the previous meeting with the Newberry trustees, I had thrown out a couple of dates and timings, trying to keep the conversation going, but also pointing out some of the necessity for not letting this drag on and on. I think that the one comment that I made was that I would hope that we would be able to get things wrapped up within a year. But that was sort of a, my personal back of the envelope kind of number. And I would certainly like to hear from the rest of you what kind of timing you think that we should give to, that we should operate on. And then as part of that, what kind of timing should we be giving the trustees to come up with a proposal for us? How do you feel about having the property disposition resolved within a year? Do you think it should be 6 months? Do you think it should be even sooner? I'd really like to hear some feedback from you guys on that.
Well, I think we need to give the Newberry trustees as much time as possible. I mean, they've already expressed concern about funding for any proposal. Even the $200,000 to $250,000 a year will take to maintain the property as is without anything else. So I say, I think they need to get started as quickly as possible exploring their options for that.
Well, yeah, and to that, I think that we need some kind of proposal from them within 6 months, because they have to show, I think, some sort of positive interest and an actual plan that they're going to pursue, so that they can bring this to a resolution within at least a target of 12 months. I mean, obviously, if there's progress that's hitting snags, it looks like it's being worked out, we're certainly going to do everything we can to make it possible for Newberry to acquire the buildings, if that's what they choose to do. But I think 6 months for a concrete plan and course of action on their part is plenty.
Yeah, I mean, they just need to get moving. And I don't know why they need us to give them a timeline to get moving.
Yeah, I'm with Chet. Why 6 months?
Well,
Ben?
my thought is, Dan, that that's not their timeline, that's our timeline. Because
Yeah, but why
at
6 months?
some point we have to determine whether we're going to go on with the township and make this happen through the township, or whether we're going to take one of the other options, like look for other agencies and so on who would like to take on the property or demolish it and put it up for sale. So I would say 6 months to actually get a plan from them would be our timeline, not theirs. They can have whatever timeline they want.
Well, what I'm saying is, why would we wait 6 months? This isn't, it's come out of the blue. Here, let me finish. This isn't something that's come out of the blue. I mean, certainly everyone in that community knows what's been happening. I think if they had interest, this is a discussion they would have had. In the meetings that I've had with them, it's almost as though this came out of the blue, that they would have anything to do with it. And, I don't see it that way. However, I think if you give them 6 months, then you'll hear from them in 6 months. And then if you give them a year, you'll hear from them in a year. Whatever your timeline is. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to anything they have suggest. I just think they should have had something prepared. And if not, I think they should have something prepared, at least to show us they want to do it. Think they like the idea of all this? I don't necessarily have buy-in that they want to do something. Just my opinion.
I agree with Dan and Chet. I think they've had, I mean, this has been talked about, as we have mentioned before, off and on over how many years, 10 years, and to kind of act as though this is a new proposal, and what are they going to do about it? If we're going to put something together, I think we should say, okay, we'll give them a certain amount of time, but put some parameters around that timeline of, they need to get back to us with, are they going to put a levy on the ballot for the fall? You know, what time frame do they have for moving forward?
I mean, I think you're right, and I think that they could. I mean, they could at least indicate interest very quickly. You know, do we plan to pursue this? Are we going to do whatever it is that we need to do to put a proposal together, to identify funding streams, to figure out a management structure for this thing? Are we going to do those things, or are we just not? And I think they should be able to at least make the decision about whether or not to proceed very quickly.
Well, they can make a general decision of interest, but in order for them to proceed, what they're going to have to do is, I think, they're going to have to get some planning done, because they'll have to hire someone to do a study of their township's needs, and that will take a little time. And then they're going to have the same kind of community meetings we had and talk to the community about, are they willing to support this? What do they want to see there, and so on? Because now they've got to drill down much, much deeper than we went. And so that will take some time. And I think, yes, I think indicating interest is the first thing that they want to do it. And I'm fine with that. I totally agree with everything you guys have said. It's just the timeline to do all those things that they have to do to actually make a decision that's good for the community is going to be a little longer than just a couple of weeks. They can indicate interest, but they have to go through a process that is going to both build community support and them rational alternatives and real information about what it is that they're going to be taking on.
I want that two-phase process.
I'm sorry, what, Chet?
I want that two-phase process. I want them to say, okay, within 2 weeks, I want them to say, okay, we're going to fish or cut bait here. And then after those 2 weeks, we can give them, they can enter another phase where they're doing the feasibility studies that you mentioned, and we can give them whatever it is we decide, 3 months, 6 months, whatever. But I want to know whether or not we're going to be dealing with the township quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so I do think, though, as I said, though, whatever timeline we give them is basically our timeline, what works for the West Geauga schools, because that's where our responsibility lies. And if they come back to us with a new timeline, then, you know, we can tell them we're interested. That's good. And, you know, I thought 6 months for some kind of plan for reuse is plenty.
Well, I think I hear Chet and Dan saying that we should give them a much shorter timeline than 6 months for an initial, at least an initial response from.
You didn't feel, no, you listened to the meeting. My impression was that 2 of the trustees were in favor of moving ahead with this.
Well, yeah, right. That was the trustee meeting. Yes, I was there at that one. And I would say, yes, that the 2 were in favor of moving forward, but they also said, so you guys got to tell us when we've got to tell you something.
Yeah, I more or less got the impression that it sounds like a good idea, and they felt that they should be involved in deciding what happened with that property. That almost as though it is a district, we owed them a certain amount of respect to declare what was going to happen with that property. What I didn't hear, I heard we should or we would like to look into what we could do with it, but I didn't necessarily hear, Ben, yeah, we really want this there. We have some great ideas of what we want there, and we need to go to our community, see if we're on target. I didn't hear that. And that's okay. I mean, we can give them that time frame. I think the best case scenario is that those buildings, in my opinion, are out of our hands and are not to become a charter school down the road. I'm sorry, I'll be honest. That to me is the best case scenario, where we don't have to demolish them. The township and the community feels like they've retained a piece of their community, and we don't have the expense of tearing that building down, or whatever they do with it, or if it becomes a building that still remains, that we're not maintaining it. So that's just my opinion. But I didn't hear from them like they were excited about this, or the prospects of it, or they've given it a lot of thought and they've had some ideas. And Chet, I'm on board with you. It doesn't take very long to give a letter of intent of interest.
Oh yeah, and I have
But
no
I'm-
problem with that. I
but
think
I'm
that's a good idea.
What I don't want, what I'm afraid of, and what I don't want is for us to say, okay, township, we'd really like to work with you. We think you're in a great position to decide what happens with this property, and give them 6 months, and they come back after 6 months and say, we're not interested.
Well, that is the risk you take. And I think if you're working with anybody, and especially the interest we have, I think, in the township taking over the property in some form, at least a piece of the property, I think it's worth that risk. I think there's a relatively low risk at talking about the building with the auditorium and the library. So I think that there's a very high probability that they could do something with it. The other building is kind of the place where we run a pretty major risk, because that's very difficult to do something with a school that size. I mean, that's hundreds of thousands of square feet. That's not going to be easy, because those square feet, they translate into dollars for renovation, dollars for modification, dollars for maintenance, and so on. So that's a lot tougher. So the question is, do we want to accept a certain level of risk by committing to the township? Because I think we all agree that the township is the best vehicle for this being redeveloped.
It might be, but it might be. I don't know what else is out there.
Well, that's true. That's
Well,
true. But there is a major advantage to the township over any other vehicles of redevelopment. And one of those is, Newberry is now about to become part of the district. And as part of the district, that community's goodwill is going to be of huge interest to us. We need their votes. They're a quarter of the votes now. And we need those votes to pass levies. That means we need that community on board with the things we do.
I think
It's-
I think you're right. I think that the township would be an admirable vehicle for moving that property forward. Whatever happens with it, I think the township would be a great organization to run it. I just want to know they're interested.
And I agree, Chet. And I think we can do that in a matter of a couple of weeks. Just tell them, hey, let us know, give us a formal letter of intent, and we will start working with you. And we could create our own timeline, what we want that to look like, our relationship with them, maybe some milestones of what we expect from them. Or they should tell us what they feel they have to do to make it happen within that timeline.
Kathy, were you about to say something?
Nope.
Oh, okay. I thought
He told you.
I mean, we don't own this property for another 3 weeks, right?
right.
I would love to hear what else is available as well.
Yeah.
In order to
make,
I'm sorry, Bill.
go ahead.
In order to make an informed decision, I have to know all the things that are out there to make an informed decision about. And while, Ben, I agree with you that goodwill from the community is very important, and I'd like to see that. It's been a mantra of mine, and maybe it sounds cliche, but I want to do what's in the best interest of making sure those kids have every dollar for their education. And so if that were another plan that made sense economically, I'd like to see that too.
Sure.
Well, and keep in mind that their taxes are going down. Right, Karen?
Karen, you're on mute.
The trustees acknowledge that, or the Newberry Township trustees acknowledge that. They said
Well,
that
I know, but I mean, they need
just
to,
wanted to know whether they could get,
that
get
needs
some
to
of
be,
that money.
that needs to be the message that they get to the community too, of, you know, if they want to do something with the building, that the community needs to come forward too. And I'm just, I mean, as I said before, I'm a little disappointed that they're kind of hand in hand with our moving toward the June 30th date, that they weren't proactive in putting some plans together. I mean, Ben's talking about finding out what the community needs and desires are. I think that maybe could have been something that they were working on rather than waiting until now. Could have been working on prior to
Well,
the drop dead date for the school transferring.
I'm not happy about that either. But, you know, we can't go back and make them do what they haven't done. You know,
No.
that is move forward. I mean, we're not in the business of like punishing people or something because they didn't do what they should have. We do that anyway. So I think, you know, we just move forward with making the best of it, because they've known for a long time that this was coming and they didn't touch it. And I think they didn't touch it because it was a political hot potato in Newberry. And so now we are where we are, and they have to take a stand now.
I agree with that, Ben. We can't go back, but I think I'm also agreeing that we don't just let put a 6 month out there and say, okay, let us know when you've made a decision. We need to get a specific timeline and their commitment.
Yeah. Well, and certainly a plan from them.
Yes.
I mean, at some point, even if it's like in 2 weeks, they give us a letter of intent, and then in 4 weeks, they give us a plan for proceeding. I mean, that I think would be acceptable. And then they could move forward with that plan. And in a certain amount of time, whether it's 6 months or whatever it is, we'd know whether the township could follow through. Because I don't think we should carry the building for more than, say, a year. I mean, with the cuts we're facing and with the expenses we're facing, it just doesn't make sense that we would, you know, have an open-ended commitment to keeping the building.
And I think you commented that you would like to know what other possibilities there were other than just dealing, first of all, other than just dealing with the Newberry trustees, and just understanding what all the options are. One of the things I was thinking about is that I would say that we've said it before, but we make it even clearer maybe, that we are welcoming proposals for disposition of the property. And maybe we almost put it out as a formal request for proposals or request for quotes, or however you want to call it. And we have I don't know, not that I want to go to a lot of effort to make up what the form is, but let's just say we've got a form that we just publish more or less and say, we want to know what everybody's ideas are, and we want to know what they are by August 1st. And so if Newberry trustees, if you're interested, get us a proposal by August 1st, September 1st. I mean, pick a date. If there is some other organization that has some ideas of how they want to do something, get us a proposal. Get it to us by. We've already said that if there were ideas that people wanted to do something, they should get them to Karen. Karen has received.
Which was a little tough, Bill, because I always felt that's a little disrespectful to Newberry. I mean, I know why we did that. Don't misunderstand me, but wasn't our buildings and property to do that with?
Well, okay, but my point is that they're going to be our buildings and our properties to do something with.
Right.
And so we sort of step it up and make it clear again that we're willing to listen, but give us proposals. Put it in writing. I mean, I would say that at this point, we've had, I'll say one, maybe two. I don't know the exact number, but I can think of one in particular who said, hey, I would really like to use the property and I would like to use it in this way. And it's not even really a full proposal because it doesn't really say an awful lot other than, yes, I would like it. But if we could scope out some things that we would want to see in a proposal and put a dead time on it and see what all comes out of the woodwork and then go from there.
By the way, Dan, the decision for having anything come to Karen was something that both boards agreed to at that joint meeting that we had at Newberry, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
in all due respect, I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I just always felt like we were a little premature on some of the stuff because we didn't own the buildings yet. I think once
no, they agreed. They agreed with us that rather than them fielding some and our fielding some, that we would just have a centralized location, and that was something that we discussed, and they were good with it. So
I've just gotten a feeling in the last few meetings that we've had that there's been a real push to do something, and I kind of get it because there won't be a board in 3 more weeks, but it's really difficult to do, and especially now with the economic climate the way it is. Who knows who will have what money to do what, right? So I was telling Bill that I was in favor of having some of their board members be part of a committee that was working on behalf and would have sort of like an equal say as to what got presented to the board. But anyway, we beat this horse, I think.
Well, the one question is, though, do we want to give the Newberry trustees a kind of preference? And part of the reason is we had that whole session with the community, and it seems like the people who were there, who probably were not all Newberry people, but there seemed to be a very strong feeling that people in Newberry wanted to see something that was community oriented happen there, and they were overall pretty in favor of the township doing something, at least that group of people. So what weight do we want to put on that? Now, do you guys think I read that right? That's how I read it.
Yeah, I would say so. And let me just do a brief segue and then we can continue. I saw the draft report from Burgess this afternoon at about 4:30. It is not ready to be a public document yet. There was still some refinement and some clarification in the language that I felt had to be done, but we should have it completed rather shortly and distributed to you folks, I think. It's going to take you some reading to get through it, I think, and to sort everything out, but I would say you're right, Ben, that the feeling is strong that at least certain parts of it should be managed by the trustees, Newberry trustees. So, but I guess my question, Dan, you said we've beat the horse, but I feel like we should still kind of we should go back to the Newberry trustees, and rather than just saying, well, give us your ideas when you get around to it, that we give them some kind of time that we say, we want to hear from you by this date.
I think we've all agreed to that. I mean, I think we've all talked about that. I'm saying
So
I think it's that two-phase kind of process that we've sort of converged on.
okay.
But I think
So
we
then,
have answered whether or not we're going to give them initially a preference to over other options to make their proposal. And so the question is, do we do what Dan suggested and literally solicit proposals, meaning they're going to be competing? Or do we give them the chance to make their case because we'd like to see them get it? So, it's what direction do we go here after the township says, yes, we're interested?
okay, and so I've heard like 2 weeks, within 2 weeks, the township should tell us whether they're interested or not. Is that what we want to tell them, or do we want to tell them a month?
Well, I think we need to find out when their meeting is. I don't know what their schedule is, but I don't know that we could say a 2-week time period when they've just had a meeting and they aren't planning on having another one for a month or what have you.
Right.
We needed to give them a shot at least one meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
One meeting, but no more.
So maybe we put it in that kind of a framework of oh, well, no, we couldn't do that. They might not have a meeting. I would think that within a month, I mean, they should have a meeting within a month
And they could hold one.
expect that yeah.
I mean, this is a major issue in Newberry. I mean, it's a major issue to us, so they could hold one if they had to.
So, August, Dan, you're on mute.
It's probably not a bad thing because I talk too much. Listen, here's how I feel. I feel you've already given them preferential treatment. You had them part of our board meeting, a joint meeting. You were in their meeting. They've been given preferential treatment. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we've not heard from any other persons or allowed any other persons to make presentations to the board, just them. So they've already gotten preferential treatment. I would be in favor of saying August 1st, we give everybody an opportunity to present to the board what they would like to do, or a presentation to the board about the proposal for that property. That gives them a month and a half, or 2 months, almost 2 months to come up with something. And then we're not asking them to find funding, Ben. We're asking them to come up with an idea. I mean, obviously, we'd love to see that they have an idea for funding, but we're asking them to come up with an idea. And from that standpoint, then we can hear what everybody else in the community thinks, and they get a fair shake. Because you don't want it to come back with, oh, yeah, well, you just gave that. You gave that to the township, and that was an asset that could have helped offset some of the expenses you have now. Oh, yeah, I'm going to vote against your whatever levy or whatever else might be up, right? We want it to be a prudent decision. I think we've already given the township preferential treatment. I don't think there needs to be any more.
Good point, Dan.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
point.
According to their standard schedule, first and third Wednesday of every month, their next meeting will be the 17th.
Well, I'm agreeing with Dan that we should open it up to other entities, if there are any others out there who have a viable and legitimate kind of proposal.
And I'm pulling for the township, just so you know. I'm pulling for the township. I just don't know that they have a sense of urgency to get it done. And every month we pay to keep that building looking the way it is just money, money out of our pocket. So.
Karen reminded me that we can't negotiate with private groups. We can only negotiate with governmental authorities. Private groups has to be done through an auction.
Again, we're not negotiating, Karen. We're looking for ideas. And again, we're just looking for a proposal for ideas. We're not then turning around and negotiating with them. But you also have to know who is interested to do what with the property. Because if you have an interested party, then you can go the route of an auction.
Right.
But if you don't
go that route, but you run the risk that someone else might get the property. And then something that you don't agree with in any way, shape, or form may happen at that property. This is why getting into the hands of the trustees is so important, because the trustees have an enormous amount of flexibility. They can work with the county, they can get UDAGs, they can get various loans, they can get tax increment financing, they can determine what use they see as the highest and best use for the interest of the community. That's why the township is so important.
Yes, and yet that building can look and sit there vacant for years and look like an eyesore. That can happen as well.
Well, that would be the township's responsibility. But I think in any document that we had transferring it, if it did in fact transfer to the township, we would have to have some clauses in there that gave us some enforcement power over the look of the building and the maintenance of the building. And there are other things. I mean, we basically put in anything there that we feel needs to be in there, including that if nothing happened, it'd be demolished in like X number of years or something. I mean, that's down the road. That's down the road. But I'm just saying that right at this moment, the main reason for having the township involved is because they can do a lot of things we can't do.
Okay, do you think it's fair at this point to go back to the township? At least do this much. Go back to the township and say, we really want to have a better idea of what you're doing, a proposal from you by August 1st.
I do, and I think the thing about that is once that happens, then we can have a more substantive discussion, possibly with a representative from the township attending and giving us the outline of what their intentions are and what they're thinking, and, you know, hold their feet to the fire on it.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get back to them on that. Related to the property as well is again, I realize that we don't have control of the property at this point. However, the library's lease arrangement for the use of that property will end July 1st. And personally, I'm not sure that we want to be in the position of kicking them out on July 1st. So I would suggest that we approach them with some kind of question as to what kind of timing or proposal they would be interested in. As far as short-term, I'll call it a short-term lease, or if you want to call it a month-to-month lease, I'm okay with that. But something to alleviate their concerns that we're going to, if they have them, that we would be kicking them out on July 1st. Any comments about that?
Bill, I have an email from their executive director. We'll be talking this week to talk about that, and I can gain some of that information. Currently, under their current lease with Newberry, they only pay for, they don't pay for anything utility-wise or anything like that. They provide a person for Newberry's students for, you know, their library services, and Newberry in return pays for their internet service. So the internet service is one of the things that's Sean has been looking at on how we can supply that. So there's some concerns there. And then on the utilities as well. So we would have to, I'd like to get the, you know, the board's thoughts on those areas and length of time of service or lease or whatever you'd like to have those discussions with them.
You guys got any input for that?
Well, just you'll probably have more on this, but at this moment, do you see a lease or a month-to-month?
I believe, I don't know that you can really, it depends on, quite frankly, what your interest is from the township and how long that process is going to take. So if you're saying that the township needs to have something back to you in August, then your lease is going to be very short. Or you're going to give them 6 months or something to that effect, because you're going to tie that property up with a lease when you're still having discussions with the township.
Right. I couldn't see, even under the best of circumstances, anything much happening in anything faster than 6 months. Even if we had an auction, after talking to the township, I mean, we'd have to publicize it for a couple months. We'd have to do a search for an auctioneer and all that. The board would have to pass whatever it had to pass. Probably have to be some kind of environmental study done. So I'm just throwing out, without any real concrete knowledge that probably 6 months is not going to be a big problem. But, I guess you'll have to talk to them about what they need. My personal thought is that they should chip in something for maintenance, because the grass has to be cut, and if there are potholes in the parking lot, they have to be taken care of. And if the roof starts leaking, we're going to have to pay for it, and so on. So I think they'd have to pay something beyond utilities and internet.
Well, the Newberry schools was getting the benefit of having a librarian there.
Right.
And
Right.
we do not need that benefit. So it's total cost to us with no benefits to us.
And they do have the savings. They're not providing that person now. So they encounter some savings in that regard. How they want to use those savings is their business, but that's something they don't have to provide. And so it shouldn't be a burden on the library system to pay something towards the maintenance of the building and the grounds.
Well, they'll still have a person there to man the library.
Sure. But that person won't be responsible for any services to students.
Oh, okay. Well,
I don't know how much they were doing that took them away from library duties. I mean, that's something. Karen, do you know anything about that?
Yes, they were providing them 2 days a week.
So
With a separate-
now,
Separate librarian for the,
There was a librarian for 2 days per week so that they would open up the library and have students could access the library during that time for 2 days per week.
what about the public? Did they have like some other hours for the public?
They have standard operating hours for the public.
Oh, okay. So when they had those 2 days for the students, was it exclusively only students, so they didn't have to have another person, or did they have a person there servicing the students in addition to whatever library personnel they needed?
The lease does not stipulate. It just says that they'll have a dedicated person at that time.
Oh, okay.
well, I would suggest that we approach them with a 3-month lease.
Yep.
That's, and then at the end of that, we'll have a better idea of whether another 3 months is reasonable, or whether it looks like we need to go month to month because things are moving faster.
would that include that they are going to be paying utilities and other things that they haven't been paying for maintenance?
Something like that, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm willing to negotiate with some of that, but basically, yeah. I mean, maybe what we just say is their cost of their lease is to cover their utilities. We won't charge them anything additional for the space, but they've got to maintain it and cover their costs. So it's no cost to us.
Okay.
I mean, that's my idea, but you guys chime in.
I don't have a problem with 3 months.
No, I think
That sounds-
that's a good short-term alternative.
Why don't we go
Okay.
with that? What do you think, Dan? Does that?
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, the only other thing that I want to mention, and then we'll move on. Sorry, guys, I've been listening to Rich give presentations too long, I guess.
Oh,
Oh,
Man, that was harsh.
Yeah, you're on mute, Rich, so it's okay.
Turned his video off, so you can't see him.
There are supposedly seven parcels of land there, but I haven't looked at them myself to see how they're all divided up. But it could be that it would be beneficial to have them divided in some way different than what they are currently. And it may be that we need to have some other, input as to other possibilities, or just working with, I guess, the Newberry trustees more, or just sorting through some of these ideas. one of the concepts that I talked to Rich about was there, as far as particularly the parcels of land, if it made sense to divide them up differently, was that he pulled together a committee to identify if there's other uses for the land that we should be thinking of other than what we've got on the table right now. We don't need to make a decision on that tonight, but be thinking about that as to how all you think we should move forward, particularly, you know, with Newberry trustees. If they say, well, they're interested in one parcel or another parcel, how would we think about dividing things up? There's a total of basically 40 acres there, but I'm not sure where all of the 40 acres go, and how we might be able to basically redivide it to sell off part of it, some of it go to trustees, how much would go with the athletic fields, all of that type of thing. So that's just one other thing for you guys to be thinking about. How do we want to move forward on that?
Yeah, well, one thing is, the trustees, if they decided to take the auditorium building and the library building, they have 80 acres that abuts it. So it would be very easy for them to take a very small amount of that, leaving the rest as possible redevelopment in another form, if that's what we thought would be beneficial.
Yeah.
Does that land back up to the, I know further north, there's some wetlands and other, but does the land back up to woods or to any creek or stream or wetland area?
It does go into woods, but I don't know what's back there in the woods. It goes over towards Kiwanis Lake, so you'd think it would drop down. I would assume, you would assume there'd be some kind of, you know, maybe even a wetland back there. I don't know, Kathy.
Yeah. I don't
But
know.
they
No other.
have some trails for cross country back there, so there's, you know, there's enough solid land that they can have cross country trails there. Beyond that, I don't know.
For running, for cross country.
Yeah,
not
cross country
skiing.
running, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just wondering whether there's any, you know, I know that the park, I know Maggie talked about having talked with the parks somewhat, and whether any land conservancy or any other entity that wants to preserve land, if it's abutting some preserved land or other open space, it might be somewhat attractive for that.
Now, if it were governmental agency, like the Geauga Park District or something, that's something we could transfer land to, right? But land conservancy and so on, we as a school board, we'd have to auction it. Is that how everybody understands this? That's how I understand it.
Okay, is that true for the land too, Karen, as well as the buildings?
Yeah, you're on mute.
We'd have to look at the Land Conservancy and see how that would, is that a 501c3?
Yeah, but I mean, and they can get you know, grants from Clean Ohio funds and others to help to pay for acquisition of land, but it would have to be an attractive, you know, have some other than just open fields and space. It probably would have to have more either wetlands or woods or you know, part of a stream or water running through it.
Okay. That's something we'd have to look at.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Rich, I took a cheap shot at you. Do you have any other comments that you would like to make?
I have no other comments.
Remember, we're being recorded.
Give you.
Okay, anybody else have any items that they would like to discuss with the board under board reports? Okay, we need a motion to adjourn to executive session to cover personnel matters, appointment and/or employment, and negotiations. We will ask Rich and Nancy and Karen.
So if you didn't get a motion, then we could go for a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Wow.
Just asking.
Really just tossing a wrench right in there, aren't you, Dan?
Just looking for options here.
I wouldn't call that a wrench. Life preserver? I don't know.
I saw Dan McIntyre on too. Is he?
Also,
He is on.
Dan has been on and then has dropped off, and it looks as though Nancy has dropped off as well.
Dan has asked
Nope.
me to notify him when he's covering more. than
Nancy's
one
there.
board.
Nancy's in that
Oh, there she
I'm
is.
here.
Motion to adjourn into executive session.
second.
Dan can also join us.
There will be no action taken after we have the executive session. Would you call the roll, please, Karen?
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm opening up the room. When Dan McIntyre enters, I will also let him in, okay?
Thank you.
For those of you staying on the meeting, I will mute my mic as well as my camera, and they will come back on just to adjourn the meeting.
Hello, Jim.
Hello, I'm back.
And we're finally back.
Very good. Welcome back.
You say that now.
Okay, Dan's unmuted, Dunn's unmuted. Sorry, you all re-enter the meeting muted, so.
Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn? I think that's what we need next.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Mr. Thorson, do you want to continue this meeting?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay,
Another one tomorrow, though, right, Dan?
That'd be good.
would you
All
call the
right.
roll, please?
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your monitoring of the stuff there, Mr. Kish.
No
Thank you,
problem. I'll
Jim.
put a copy of this recording up on the website tomorrow, okay?
Thanks, Jim.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Thanks,
care, guys.
Karen, Rich, and everybody on the board. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Right.